Alrighty, welcome. What we are going to be doing today is having a crack at some stream epistemology, as I call it, which is my change of the term that Anthony Magnabosco came up on his channel with street epistemology, where he has these very interesting conversations with people in the street about the things they believe, the claims that they hold to be true, and how did they come to that decision. It's something I find fascinating because I think this is what Anthony's developed is a really interesting tool for exploring somebody's reasoning in a way that might help them recognize the flaws in it, rather than what we typically do when we're in those conversations, which is point out the flaws in somebody else's reasoning. I find it very interesting because I'm fascinated by this, by cognitive dissonance and the counterpoint to that, which I would call cognitive assonance. Cognitive dissonance is that feeling of discomfort you get when you realize there is an incongruence between views you hold. But it quite often results in cognitive biases where we will just sort of assume ourselves to be right or discount what the other person's saying because we go, oh, they've just got it in for me or something. We don't like to realize that we're wrong about things, and rather than going, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm going to change my views, what we tend to do is dig our heels in. And so why I'm interested in Anthony Magnabosco's technique is because he is really adept at being able to ask questions while maintaining rapport in such a way that the other person is free to explore their own views, their own epistemology, reason for holding their beliefs, without it being attacked. So that way they can go through this, what might be an uncomfortable experience for some people, without experiencing that dissonance, potentially even experiencing what I would call the counterpoint of that, which is assonance, a sense of, yes, I get this. This is me. This feels good and affirming. So about to have a conversation with Luke, who is, I'll let him describe himself, but he is, I think he would be comfortable being described as a Catholic Christian. And we're probably going to talk about some of his views on Catholicism, though I'm going to let him choose what he would like to discuss. And I'm going to be using behind me on this whiteboard, Jamboard, because it's a useful thing where I can write down the wording he says. Because one of the really key things to street epistemology, I would argue one of the key things to any form of persuasion or just getting on with people is to copy their words exactly. If they say something, if they make a claim or suggest something or tell you how they're feeling, if you're able to remember those words exactly and use them back, it lubricates the conversation such that they go, yes, that's exactly what I think, and that's the way I think that. Whereas when we try to get it right, but we paraphrase and get it a little bit differently, that can cause a bit of that dissonance, that sort of, it's not quite what I meant. So some of my explanation in this is going to be about copying their wording, and that's one place this Jamboard is super useful for these conversations. So I'm going to drop in now and say g'day to Luke. Might even get him up on the screen if I'm able to figure out how to do that. All right, here we are, dropped into the session. G'day Luke, you there?
Oh, hi. How are you doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm going to just share my video now. Oh, and you're sharing yours already. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And you're happy appearing on stream, are you, Luke?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so let me now switch to let me just figure out which view I go with. Can I pop that out actually? I think I can, yeah, pop out your one and then just see you. And then there we go. There you are. That's where you should be. Fantastic. Actually, I can get it even fancier. Check this out. We'll go into a bar.
Nice.
Fantastic. So, g'day, Luke.
We did that already. Should you have more question on the one we did? It is illogical to be an atheist.
It is illogical to be an atheist. We could do that again. I was going to leave it up to you this time because we've had a couple of these discussions in the past, and you've expressed to me different views you hold. Actually, I want you next to the camera so I'm looking at you. So I'm going to fix up this this a bit so that works. Oopsie, don't want that on the screen. What will I do? Here we go. I'll just do a window capture. Discord video. Yeah. So what of the claims? Because you've got that list of ones that you do. What of those would you like to talk about? Do you think would be an interesting thing to discuss?
It is illogical to be an atheist.
It's illogical to be an atheist. Okay. You like that one because it's a bit provocative, I'm guessing.
It's the last one, my claim, and it's one that we already did, so I think we already have a chart on it.
Sure,
and
sure.
I'm wondering if it's complete or if it could be complete.
Oh, well, we'll start again on a new one just because I'm streaming this, so for anybody watching, they won't have seen that one.
Okay.
So as soon as I've got you in a sort of comfortable looking spot. So do you want to tell me a bit about, because we can go with it's illogical to be an atheist again, but we'll just start from the beginning if that works for you.
Yeah.
So tell me, why is it? Is it illogical to be an atheist?
It is.
Okay.
No logic. No logic.
No logic. There's no logic in being an atheist.
No
right.
logic.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
right.
maybe a little bit of logic, but the reasons are mostly, in my opinion at least, not valid.
Not valid. Okay. So yeah. So let's explore. Go on. Tell me.
It would be something akin to, I like to be part of the group, of the atheism group, and that's why I choose to be an atheist. So that would be not a valid reason to be an atheist, but still, someone could claim this is logical since I want to be part of a group, and I don't want to be part of the group of the losers. So I want just to be the Catholic losers. So I chose the cool part of the atheist group, which are the cool guys and the.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I see. All right. So it's illogical to be an atheist. What have we done here? There, we just want you on the screen. Yeah. So, okay, it's illogical to be an atheist. So I guess the two main terms in this that we need to define are illogical and atheist.
Yeah.
So what would you say is it means to be illogical? What is it? What is illogical?
So to me, in that sentence, the illogical I use is the one I would use when I have a task to achieve in 5 minutes, and I have two choices. One of them is being able to achieve the task in 10 minutes. The other one is achieving the task in 5 minutes. And the illogical choice would be to choose the one taking 10, because I only have 5 minutes to achieve it. So that's, in that sense, illogical.
So could I put that? How could I put that? Is illogical to choose that would be an example of logic, would you say?
Yeah, that's usually that's how I explain what a word means. I use an example. So someone has a task, 10 minutes, a task for that would has 5 minutes to do the task, and choose the 10 minutes way to do it instead of the 5 one.
Right, so let me make sure I've got this in a way, because I have somewhat changed that wording and getting your wording exactly right. So the way I've put it there is, an example of illogical would be someone who has 5 minutes to do a task, and they choose to do it, and chooses to do it in a way that takes them 10 minutes.
Instead of the 5.
Right, sure. Instead of a way that would take 5, would that?
Yeah,
perfect.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Are there any
both of them are available. It's really important that both ways are available for it to be illogical.
Sure. Okay. All right. So we can use that example. And then what do you mean by an atheist? What is an atheist?
So someone who claims that there is not enough evidence for God.
Right. Okay. Someone who claims there is not enough evidence for God. So, right. And I remember when we talked last time, it circled a bit around this word enough,
Yes.
or enough evidence, I guess is how we could
hmm
put it. So that would be my question, and I think would be an interesting place to start and talk about what do we mean when we say enough evidence?
So it's really subjective.
Hmm.
Each one of us have our own definition of what enough is.
Sure.
For I take the example of you telling me, I want to know what you ate yesterday
Hmm.
for brunch, and some people would say, okay, I need a picture, and I would say, well, I just need to ask you.
Mm.
I don't need the picture.
Right. Okay. So what would be enough is somewhat dependent. How would you say that?
Individuals.
Right.
It's subjective.
Right.
I don't know how, like some people would say this is enough, and those would say no, no. He told me, but I need the picture to make sure that we
Mm.
really ate an hamburger yesterday. So depends on who.
Sure. So yeah. So enough. That word enough in enough evidence would be subjective. Um,
Yeah.
and for some people, they would like a photo, like show me a photo of a meal. Whereas for some people, it's like if you told me you ate something for lunch, I would just go, yeah, sure, I'll believe you.
Mm.
Right. So what do you think would influence whether somebody wanted more evidence? Because I guess some of what you're saying is different people will want different amounts of evidence.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, would you also say sometimes the same person might want different amounts of evidence depending on the claim?
Yes. So of course, if you gave me the you have a claim telling I ate a hamburger yesterday and you will die today because of that.
Right.
I will ask you more than just your or you're not telling me I would die, but I know that I would die because you ate an hamburger yesterday. You're telling me that you ate an hamburger yesterday wouldn't be enough evidence in that case. So yeah, depending on the case,
So
the
Tom,
consequences of the claim, my enough would change.
right. The consequences enough will change depending on the wow.
Mm. Yeah,
What is
enough would
enough
change with.
will
Oh yeah.
change depending. Right. Would you also think that the probability of the claim would influence how much evidence you would need?
So no, the consequence influence more. Let's take the example of you telling me you saw a fairy yesterday.
Mm.
There is no consequences for you seeing a fairy per
Hmm.
se. So I would say, well, okay, I don't need more than you telling me. I don't need to ask you pictures of the fairies or whatever.
Okay.
It's enough evidence for me to believe you because there is no consequences. But if we were to
So
have a
if I
consequence,
said to you, I saw fairies yesterday,
yeah,
and I didn't have photos, you would
mhm.
still, how would you how would you hold that claim in your mind? Would you think that I had made a truthful claim or not?
It's I don't care claim.
It's an I don't care.
I don't
Okay.
care it's true
So
or false because there is no consequences to
okay.
that claim. It's
I
like,
see.
or maybe if I did care that you're not crazy, I would ask you, well, what do you mean by fairies and stuff like that?
Hmm.
More evidence because I wanted to make sure that you're not crazy. But right now, I think maybe today I would ask you questions because we talked together, and
Sure.
you don't seem like the kind of guy who would claim he saw fairies without kind of
Sure.
evidence. So I'm like, interesting. You claim that. I think I will ask you questions, and my
Right.
if you
Okay.
you
Yeah.
as a person would claim that, I would ask you questions. But if someone I don't know claim that, came up to me with that claim, I'm like, nah, okay, I don't care.
Right. You
I
don't
don't
you don't
have
care.
a
But would you would
yeah.
you would you I guess believe would be a strong word. Would you think that that was true that they had seen fairies?
I wouldn't go up to the fact is it true or not.
Right.
If someone were to ask me, was it true that he saw a fairy yesterday? I'm like,
Yeah.
he told me so, but maybe not. That would be my answer to
Okay.
the question.
Okay. And
So
so then I'm
I
guessing
haven't
what
checked.
would flip it if we talk about the consequences again might be if someone said, I saw fairies yesterday, and you were like, I see no consequence in this, so I don't really care enough
Mm.
to even decide maybe they did, maybe they didn't is a good enough place to stay for now. And then but perhaps maybe it started to become clear that, oh, because I saw fairies, I'm going to need some of your money. I need you to start
There we go.
donating money. Then you're like, well, hold up.
Wait a minute.
Right, I'm with you now. Now I want a bit of proof of these fairies you've got.
Yeah.
Right,
Give me more.
I'm with you. Yeah,
And
okay.
like I said, if it's riding on eggshells, who's telling me that, I would be. Wait a minute. I want to know more. I'm really intrigued in what makes you say you saw fairies yesterday,
Okay.
and I'm pretty sure I would have an answer like, yeah, she was on this Cinderella movie I was watching. I was like, okay, that's what you meant, that you saw
Right.
fairies yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
then you make my thresholds of enough evidence
yeah, sure.
of seeing fairies yesterday.
Okay, so it seems that there are a few elements here. One is their consequences, and that seems to matter more than the probability of the claim. But then it also seems that there's something, if you know the person or you know that you've spoken to them a bit, that might create a level of intrigue, and that because
Mhm.
you're intrigued, you might go, oh, now I'd like to know a bit more about this.
Yes. I don't
Okay.
want the person I know to be crazy. That's what I don't want to think, oh, that person is crazy. She's
Sure.
saying stuff like she's so furious yesterday. I'm like, I am having a relationship with that person. I don't want to think that she's crazy. Let me check what she meant by I saw fairies yesterday.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm just going to make my desk stand up, so excuse my wheeling around.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Okay. So where we're at so far is it's illogical to claim to be an atheist, and illogical you mean is like somebody doing something in a way that takes 10 minutes when they only have 5 minutes, and there would be a 5-minute way of doing that thing. So I guess yeah, so I think I'm clear on that. We might explore that a bit more. But then someone who is an atheist is somebody who claims there's not enough evidence for God. And when we say enough evidence, we're saying enough is a bit subjective. It depends on who's asking and what the claim is and what the consequence of the claim.
Mm.
So would you say there are consequences to whether God exists or not?
For me or for someone else?
Yeah, either way, for you or
So,
for someone else.
okay. For me, yes. If I didn't believe in God, I would have trouble going to heaven. So
Right.
it's that the far away, consequences. The closest consequence would be being able to uh, how to call that, cope with difficult situation.
So right. So the consequences would be. So I'm going to start a new slide here because I want to say the consequences, because that seems like it's an important part here. That can go in the middle, nice and big. And then what we're saying is, what are some of these consequences? And you're saying some of them are going to heaven.
Mhm.
And going to heaven, what would that mean to you?
Success. That's the
Success.
goal.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
excellent.
am done.
I'm done now. Okay. So some of
Like,
it is
I'm cool.
about going to heaven. Remind me again what the second one was that you said?
um Coping with difficulties.
Right. Okay. Coping with difficulties. Excellent. Okay. So that's one of the consequences. Is that of just believing in God, or is that one requires the existence of God to help you in coping with difficulties?
Helps me.
It helps you. I see.
God helps me.
Helps you cope with difficulties. Okay.
Yeah.
So excellent. So okay. Any other things that are the consequences for the existence or otherwise of a God?
So in coping is a subset of joy and happiness. So it's paix, joie, et amour. So peace, joy, and happiness are the fruits of me believing in God.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I get from it: peace, joy, and happiness.
Okay.
And you have being able to cope with difficulties, which is a subset of this.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. So then I guess we could look on the other sides of the consequences. So these are the consequences of the existence of God. Then we could look at, if God does exist, what are the potential negative or other consequences, or the consequences of the non-existence of a God.
Okay.
If so, because these seem like, if God exists, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing it is, I will go to heaven by abiding by his words and trusting and believing in him. But I also imagine, if God exists for someone like myself, that might mean going to hell.
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't mean that you yourself who is an atheist, right?
I would call myself certainly by your definition, I'm an atheist. I would be someone who claims
not
there's no
enough
existence
evidence,
for God.
kind of. Okay. Okay. So no, it doesn't mean that you go to hell. It means something else. It's your decision of what means the absence of God for you.
Okay. When you say
it's subjective,
it means something else. It's subjective. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that. Subjective in what way?
So you choose what is the consequence. You choose what would be the consequence for you not having a God. If you say there is no consequence for me, that's what you believe. That what would happen if there is no God, and then you have objective truth, which is you will be less. I don't know what would be the other reasons, consequences.
Okay. And so then, and I think that's an interesting place to be, that I don't know. So then what about if we went the other side to say, what would be maybe let's put this over here and then go, what would be the consequences for the non-existence of a God? So if God weren't to exist, what would be those consequences, do you feel?
For me?
Yeah, for you or for anybody.
The others, I don't know. I know for me.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it would be the opposite of, so not going to heaven.
Okay. Not going to heaven.
And not having help to cope with difficulties, and not having this kind of way to have joy, happiness, and
sure. Do you think it could be possible that you could have help coping with difficulties if a God didn't exist, but you did believe in them? Would that in some ways help cope with difficulties? Do you feel that coping with difficulties is only possible with the existence of a God?
So it's hard to know what would happen if God did not exist, since he does. So
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I guess the question could be, let's say if we said like a bank account is an interesting one for me, where we kind of go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, I know some atheists who cope with their difficulties. So for them, God is not, and they don't use God to cope with their difficulties. So I know how it is possible to cope with their difficulties without God. It's a possibility, something that exists. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
That's what
So there are some people who might be able to cope with their difficulties without believing in a God.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess some of what I'm also wondering is, and this is where I was going when I was saying a bank balance, because I find it interesting that if I open up my banking app, it will tell me how much money I have, but I just
Okay.
have to kind of trust that unless I want to
Correct.
withdraw it all. So
Mhm.
give it to me all. I want to hold it in my hands. Then I don't need to trust anymore. I would know it. And I'm wondering if let's say my bank was going, "Hey Harry, you're a millionaire. You've got a load of
Oh,
money."
wow. Nice.
Is it possible, even if that was inaccurate, even if they just moved the decimal place by accident 3 spaces over and I only actually had $1,000 or something like this, could I still have that ability to cope with difficulties, even if the bank balance was wrong, but the feeling that I got from going, I got $1 million might help me cope with difficulties, or you don't think that would be the case?
Uh,
So I sort of believed in the
okay.
existence
So
of
let's say you
millions.
have a house that you need to buy, but you only have $1,000, and the house is $2,000, and the bank tells you you have $1 million instead of $1,000. You buy the house, and you don't have the difficulty anymore. So no need to cope.
Right, right. So I think the challenge here would be that I guess, yeah, I'm coming from this more from my side, where I need to get more onto your side to understand it for you. Because for me, yeah, the checking the bank balance for me when it comes to the existence of God, I think maybe I do that when I die. That's when I get to find out.
Oh,
But maybe not if it's
what?
subjective.
Yeah.
If it's
Okay.
subjective, then it would. I guess. What do you mean? Yeah. So what does that mean that it's subjective? The existence of God is subjective.
No, the consequences for the existence of God is
Okay.
subjective,
The
not the existence
consequences.
itself.
Okay, so tell me a bit about what you
Yeah.
mean by that. In what way are they subjective, those consequences?
So for my friend who believes in God, he uh, he has other consequences than those I told.
Sure. He does have them. He has
Yeah.
that sense of coping with difficulty. He has peace, joy, and happiness.
No, he has different.
Different.
Maybe he has this one too,
Right.
but for him, the main reasons are not joy, happiness, and what was the last one? Uh,
Peace, joy, and happiness. Coping with difficulties.
peace. Yeah,
Going to heaven. But
yeah.
then I need to put
So
this. I need to
I
put that
hope
in order.
going to heaven is one of his main reason consequences of the existence for the existence of God
Right.
for him. I hope. But let's say he's one of those Buddhist people
Sure.
who believes in God, so no heaven for him.
Right.
So he has the consequences for the existence of God that are different than mine, therefore subjective to him.
Okay. Okay.
Nirvana, reincarnation, those kind of things.
Okay, all right. So there are still consequences, but because they're subjective, they're dependent on that belief in itself.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So it seems here it's as interesting to me because it seems here that what you were saying is, if there are consequences for something, then it is good to increase our bar for what is enough evidence based on the
Mhm,
consequences.
mhm.
That we require more evidence for something. So if I said I've seen fairies, and you go, well, there's no consequence. You're not asking me for any money. Perhaps if it was somebody by whom you are not intrigued, you would just go, all right.
Mm.
But if there are consequences, you would ask for more evidence. You would say it would be logical to ask for more evidence. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So it seems then here you're saying there are significant consequences for the existence of God.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that mean then that I would ask for more evidence for that because these consequences are significant? I imagine this one is quite significant.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that mean that I therefore it would be logical to ask for more evidence?
Yes.
Okay. So then let's talk about what evidence
Enough.
would be enough for that person.
That's it.
So all right, I'll start a new slide just on the word enough.
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 That's the gist of it. That's the
Sure.
word we stuff that we
We got to last
underline
time, yeah.
and making it enough. This is a word that makes it all illogical.
Right. All illogical, right. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Because if there was no, um, if Inus wasn't there,
Yeah.
then you have no evidence per se.
Sure.
That then there is no illogicality in being an atheist.
Right.
But
There's
there
no
are
evidence.
evidence. There are enough evidence for many people.
Right.
Most of the world, basically, have enough evidence for God.
Sure. So let's go through some of those evidences for the existence of God. Which ones? Which do you find the most compelling evidences?
The one that was enough for me was the prime mover argument.
Prime mover argument. All right. Do you want to give me a quick idea of the prime mover argument? Sounds like a
everything has a cause. If you want to answer the question why there is something instead of nothing, you must have an uncaused cause, which is a prime mover.
Right. If you have something that is... Yeah, so say again.
If you want to answer the question, why is there nothing instead of something?
Why is there
something instead of nothing? Yeah.
Yeah. Why is there something instead of nothing?
The answer is an uncaused cause.
Sure.
And that's a prime mover.
And so that is the prime mover.
Yeah.
Hence the prime mover, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's funny. I was immediately thinking, what are those Decepticons? Transformers.
Nice.
Prime. Optimus Prime mover.
Prime. There you go.
Yeah. Right. So the prime mover argument to you was enough.
Was enough. Yeah.
Right. Well, it was enough. I see. So because I can imagine there might be some people who haven't come across that prime mover argument, or perhaps some people who say, I understand that argument, but
it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
Maybe they might say that the uncaused cause isn't so much an answer as much as it is a question, and a great question to ask, but not the evidence of a prime mover, just the evidence that we should look harder for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would you say then if somebody was to say that, because to me it's a good question, but it's not an answer, that there is a prime mover?
Okay, what's enough?
So that would be subjective for them, and they would say, based on my subjective reasoning of that, I would say that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you would say about that, what would you say about that if they were to say that?
What is enough?
What is enough? Yeah. So let's what is enough
for you? If that is not enough, what is?
Right. Sure. So that's enough for you, but might not be enough for them. So then the question becomes, what is enough?
For you, yeah.
Yeah. Because enough is subjective. Okay, so I'll add for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. And so if I said, so this argument is enough for you, then somebody else might say, here's how much I would consider to be enough evidence. And if enough was subjective, would they be, what would you say about that? I said, I require a different proof.
What? Say that again.
I'm trying to ask this cleanly, but I'm struggling to find a way. So what about if I said enough for me would be if I read the holy texts and saw revelations, scientific revelations ahead of their time, that would be enough for me. If I saw within those texts the description of atoms or orbits or something, and I went, wow, this has to be somebody who created the earth that I walk on, who's revealing enough knowledge of this. And when I read the texts, because this is of such consequence to me, because the consequence is so significant, I need more evidence. I'm going to set that bar very high, because it's not asking you about whether you've seen fairies or have a dog. Sorry, ate a sandwich. And I don't see that. And that was, for me, not enough. Would that be a logical position, or would that be an illogical position?
So you would have to say, why is it enough? The position of having this particular thing, God in the Bible, writing the Bible, talking about the future in the Bible, is enough. Why is it enough? And yeah, I'm thinking of all the atheists I've met up to now. They weren't aware of what enough is. Of those who were aware of what enough is, the bar were met. So let's say they wanted to read the Bible and have proof of thing of the future, but we're still saying it is not enough. I need more.
So the claim there seems to be the atheists I've met weren't aware of what enough is. Help me understand how that.
Yeah, most of them
how that
are
fits
not
with,
aware. Yeah.
So help me understand how that fits with this idea that enough is subjective. Because I would have thought, if I thought enough was subjective, then enough would be enough for whoever's the person saying it. So I think I'm missing something there.
Yes, the example that you gave, I would read the Bible and find clues about the future.
Sure, yeah.
This is what you describe as enough.
For me,
it is a test that you can do, that you created. I open the Bible, I read it, I find clues about the future, and if I find clues, I accept God. If I don't find clues, I don't accept God. And that is an example of what enough is.
Right.
Such examples are not given to me by those most atheists I met.
Right. By most atheists.
Okay, yeah, most atheists. As they say, what is your evidence? I tell them, and they say, okay, this I know of, but it is not enough.
Right.
But they're not aware of what enough is. They don't know what enough is. That is why it is illogical to choose to be an atheist.
So if they're not aware of... So it sounds like if you're saying they're not aware of what enough is, are you aware of what enough is?
Yes.
Okay.
Prime mover argument was enough.
Okay. And that's enough for you, or that's enough?
No, for me, of course.
So I see. Subjective. So when you're saying that the atheists weren't aware of what enough is, you mean those atheists weren't aware of what enough was for them?
Correct.
Okay. So if they were aware of what enough was, what would that mean for their position if they were saying, I'm aware I've set a limit or a requirement for what enough is for me, and it just hasn't met that bar? What would you think about that claim? Would that be logical, or?
So yes, but the choosing of being an atheist is not logical for another reason in that case.
Okay.
So I've met an atheist who had the bar. He set the bar to seeing a miracle.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
That's what he wanted. He said he said
bar.
It by
right.
writing.
Please come down and do some cool magic for me, God. Then I'll believe it. Okay, good. Right, got it.
I'll be able to trust that God exists when I see a miracle. That's what we have. It was a writer, so he wrote in the newspaper.
Sure.
Okay. And what happened was he saw a miracle. He was there when the miracle happened, and still said, "This is not enough."
This is not enough. Okay.
So that's where it is illogical. Whenever your enough is met, you still say, "Oh well, no. Finally, that is not enough. I need more." And that's where it's illogical.
Right.
Okay. That for the few that were saying what is enough. I haven't yet to meet those who set the bar at an impossible task. So they
Okay.
would say, I will believe in God enough for me, enough evidence if he were to draw a squared circle.
Sure. So yeah,
You know,
do something
I'm like,
impossible, and would be,
yeah,
because what would you
I
think
would
about
be. I
somebody
would
who
be
is
like,
asking for an
but your
impossible thing?
enough is illogical.
Yes.
I'm sorry, your enough is illogical. Therefore, your position is illogical. And go away.
Yeah. Even though
So yeah,
enough is
how would I
subjective,
do
I can objectively tell you that enough is silly. Right. I see.
Right.
Okay. So enough is so then could it be possible for you to meet an atheist who set the bar at a reasonable point, at
Yeah,
a possible thing, and said, I just haven't seen that evidence yet?
yeah. The
And
miracle one was something.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And so would you consider that atheist to be logical in that?
So yes and no. Okay. Let's say today I meet an atheist who says I will believe when I see a miracle. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I would say, okay, now you have set your bar at enough. But
Right.
seeing a miracle is something that others experienced before. It is something that is experienced by people besides yourself many times,
Right.
more than once,
Right.
And based on that, why do you need to experience it?
Sure.
Why are the others' experience not enough?
Sure.
Basically, to and that's where the illogicality comes into place. Saying I need myself to experience the miracles, the others they don't work,
But wouldn't that
and
make
that's
sense if
where it's like, well,
so if that person were to say to you, because one of the things you said before is whether something requires evidence at all,
mhm,
or enough evidence, is whether there is consequence. And then if they were to say, well, I have heard of those other claims of miracles, but I think there are consequences for believing them. I think that might be priests within the church who are telling me those things for whom they will gain advantage. So there is consequence for them, and for whom they want me to give up perhaps personal liberties, maybe my Sundays. So there is
mhm.
a consequence or potentially a cost. So I raise the bar to a point where I think they could be lying, but it's also possible they might be mistaken or something. So that's why I require a bar of seeing a miracle myself.
Yeah.
Would that be
So,
logical?
mm, in a strict sense, yeah. But in the sense of the 5-10 minute example, it's not logical to choose that as an enough
Sure.
because you are wasting time, precious time, that prevents you to get to the good part, basically. The the um, the uh, the probability that you get to see a miracle is where, okay.
Okay.
um that's
So let me just put
uh
my question there. Was that logical?
mhm,
And then I think your
mhm.
response was yes and no.
Yeah.
They are wasting time. They're wasting precious time.
So yeah,
Sure.
yes, technically it's logical. No, because the enough isn't realistic.
The enough isn't
So
realistic. Okay.
yeah, I would ask you for a film of you eating a hamburger yesterday. That's would be my enough. I would still have. You would say like, "Come on, I ate a hamburger yesterday." Yeah,
Hmm.
but because if you ate hamburger yesterday, I don't have hamburger today. There is a consequence that is strong for me today.
Sure.
I need that video. If you don't give me the video, I don't have enough evidence
Okay.
to give you back your money. Let's say I need to reimburse your hamburger that you ate yesterday. I'm like, yeah, okay, you asking for a video of me eating my hamburger while I was alone, that's too much. That's
Sure.
not a logical bar to set. in that sense,
Would that be a logical bar to set if the consequence was high enough? So if the consequence was not just you're paying me back for a hamburger, but the consequence was you owe me $40,000 because I ate a hamburger, would then I go, okay, show me the video then, buddy?
Yeah, please.
So if the consequence
and
raised
the 10,000 people
right,
watching you eat them,
right,
but
right,
yeah.
with you now, okay.
So yeah, the enough it could be illogical, even if technically it is logical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's technically logical to ask for a video for $1 or $2.
Sure.
Technically, it's okay. It's logical, but it is illogical because you're asking too much for nothing.
Sure. So what if then the person, the atheist who says there's not enough evidence for God was saying, for you, the cost might be quite low. So the prime mover argument might be enough for you. The consequence is quite low because, let's say they were to say to you, you live in a Christian majority place. Mm-hmm. Lots of people around you are Christians. The cost is quite low. Plus there are benefits to believing. Whereas for me, my mum is a biologist, a hot one. Yeah. For anybody here, we were talking the other day about this, and we were talking about one of the consequences being you met a hot biologist. So I had to wind it back to that one. And my dad was a physicist, and they are members of the Australian Atheist Society. Let's say, I don't know if that exists. Yeah. And so I said, it doesn't make sense to me based on what I've come across, but also the costs to me for doing that would be significant because I feel like my parents might look down on me or might cast me out. My social circles would change, and I feel that I would then need to tithe 10% of my income to the church, and I would need to turn up on Sundays, and there seems like there's a lot of cost. So I'm going to need more than the prime mover argument. I'm going to need maybe not so much, because I agree with you, not so much that I want a miracle, but I would ask for some burden that was somewhere between these two. Would that be logical for them to say that?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be then logical for them, if they weren't shown that evidence, to say, well, I don't have enough evidence to believe there is a God.
Correct.
Okay. So then, does that change this at all for that, if there were that person?
Because this, what you described, never happens. It will be
it
illogical.
Will be if it happens.
If it happens, but since it never happens, it is illogical to be an atheist.
I feel like you're wiggling out of that one a bit, Luke.
No, I'm not wiggling. I'm saying yes, there is a way to be an atheist to be logical.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
So there is a way to be logical and be an atheist. Right.
But right now, today, in the world, it is not the case.
So you don't think there's any or many people who are in or close to that category, like people born in China, for example, for whom, you know, they've been brought up without God for quite a few generations now, and they go, well, there's a significant cost because if I were to believe in Islam, there's a chance that I would be oppressed and put into a concentration camp. All of my parents have been atheists since, you know, Mao Zedong. Would you say that for them that it might be logical? Because they haven't heard the prime mover argument, and they haven't experienced a miracle.
Okay.
Would that be logical?
And they say there's not enough evidence?
Yes, they would say, I haven't yet seen enough evidence.
Do they know what enough is?
I thought, tell me, because I would have thought their enough would be subjective. Tell me your thoughts on what enough is for them.
Yeah. But are they aware of what enough would be in their situation? Those hypothetical people that you just invented.
Yeah. So okay. So what you're saying is we need to think a bit about what we mean by enough before we can make this assessment of what enough is.
And therefore, the assessment of being illogical.
Right. So
If you don't know what enough is, choosing to be an atheist is illogical.
okay. But if you do know what enough is,
It's less illogical, depends on what enough is.
right, then it's less illogical. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to start off with your confidence rating in this. We had it
Yeah.
from last time though. Is it still at 65%?
Correct.
Excellent. So it's you're 65% sure that it is illogical to be an atheist, but it sounds like you would agree that in some circumstances, if somebody has established what enough is for them, and there is some consequence that makes them ask for that enough, and that enough might get higher if the consequence is higher, you might agree in certain circumstances that for them to ask for a quite high bar for enough that hasn't been met yet might be logical. You haven't met any of those atheists though.
There you go. Because everyone that I know of that ask, they were aware of their enough.
Mm-hmm.
Their enough were met.
So
the bar were met. The logical bar were met. Therefore, making the choice of being an atheist still not a logical choice.
Say that again,
the few
sorry.
people that I've met who had the enough,
mm-hmm.
so they knew how much was enough. The enough were met. So this proof that they thought of were fulfilled by events around them, and and they still chose to be an atheist.
Right.
Even if their enough were met, they still chose to be an atheist.
Okay.
And they still chose to say, oh, well, yeah, I said it was enough, but finally, no, it's not enough. Therefore, making the choice illogical choice, because you are going against yourself.
Right. So it sounds like what you were saying is you've talked to some atheists about this, and they have set an enough, and that enough has been met, but they still choose not to believe, and that is illogical.
Say there's not enough. Yeah.
That does sound to me very illogical. I'm with you on board there.
Thank you.
Absolutely with you on that one. I want to go back though to these ones who you haven't met any of these. Would you say it's reasonable to say that if I haven't met any atheists who have the right standard for enough, if they don't exist?
No. So it's not just me. You know, of course, it's a trend basically on the internet, and you have this kind of rule of probabilities and numbers where that backs the fact that there is enough evidence. There should be enough evidence for most people and those who are. So yes, it would be illogical if it was just me, but then again, it's not just me. More people than me are thinking, well, they're saying there's not enough, but they're not aware of what enough is.
Okay, right. So you've had enough examples of seeing atheists who don't have enough, who do have enough or have a bad benchmark, we might say, for enough. Therefore, would you say it's therefore reasonable to assume that no atheists have set a reasonable benchmark for enough that hasn't been passed? Or just that you have a lot of evidence of atheists you have met who have that poor bar, that bar is in the wrong place or it has been met, but they still choose not to believe?
The second part is more correct than the first one.
Right.
Yeah. Say the second part again. Yeah.
Let me try to say it. It sounds like what you're saying is I have evidence of there being lots of atheists that have the bar set in the wrong place for enough. Their enough is wrong, or that their enough is right and it has been passed, but they still say there's not enough evidence for God.
Cool.
Would you say that's reasonable then to assume that atheists who exist, there aren't any atheists who exist who have the bar set in the right place, that it hasn't been met?
So it's unlikely. It is possible, but it is unlikely based on the data I have accumulated up to now.
Okay. So what evidence would you need that would be enough for that? Is there a consequence? Is there a consequence for believing, for saying there is enough evidence?
Coming back. Sorry, what? What would be the consequence for?
For if you met an atheist, they went, I'm an atheist and I haven't seen enough evidence for the existence of a God. Would you say there's a consequence for that? For you?
Yes.
What's the consequence for you?
Okay, it depends on the context, of course. But for me, I want that person to meet God.
Right.
It's something good.
Okay.
For them, it's like I have this ice cream that I like, and I want
everybody to share it.
Ice cream.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I want to share it. So
everyone to taste
there is a consequence for me. I'm like, why do you do that? Please try the ice cream.
Come on, have some of my ice cream. So it seems like, right, because you want them to experience this, that is a consequence for you.
Yeah, it's a kind of a consequence. Yeah.
Would you say that for somebody saying the consequence is there, but it's like the consequence of wanting somebody to share in this taste of ice cream?
Yeah.
Right. But because it seems, I guess I'm trying to ask this question using clean language, but it's going to become very convoluted. Yeah. What I'm getting at is what I would get at is this sounds similar to this claim up here of, I haven't seen a miracle personally. Because it sounds like what you're saying is, I haven't seen an atheist who holds those views personally.
Me and others.
Me and others. Yeah. Me and others haven't seen an atheist who holds these views for the right reasons. Would you say that's a good reason to conclude that something doesn't exist?
It is illogical to choose to be an atheist. That's the conclusion.
Yes, but we're exploring the logic of this. So how? Yeah, because the question we're getting at is somewhat what Michael's asked in chat here, which is about. Oh, sorry for saying your name. Is how do we know that they haven't set those standards in the right place, but we just haven't seen that their enough is correct for them because it's subjective, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah. So those people, we claim they exist, and there is a possibility, unlikeliness, but there is a possibility for them to exist. Mm-hmm. And
would there be a consequence in their existence for you?
It depends on how many. Yes, there is a consequence, but it would depend on how many of them are there.
So let's say there were 3 on the out of the 7 almost 8 billion people on the planet. Let's say there were 3. Oh. Would that be...
The claim would still hold. It's still illogical to be an atheist.
Sure. I'm just trying to establish, if there were only 3 and they all lived in a yurt in Mongolia, would you say that consequence was sufficiently low for you? That you're like, yeah, there's some people that haven't tasted this ice cream and it is good ice cream, but there's only 3 of them and they live in a yurt in Mongolia. Would you say that consequence is sufficiently low that you would no longer require evidence? You could just take my word that there's 3 people in a yurt. Do you get what I mean? Because I'm going back to this thing because
I'm sorry. I'm not following you. I lost you.
So one of the things,
there is ice cream, there is yurts, there are people, and there is
yeah.
atheists. Like, I'm not.
It's a
I'm not
very
covered,
long-winded
so.
way of saying it. So what I was saying is, let's say, for example, there were 3 people who were atheists who lived in a yurt, who
Okay.
didn't interact with the outside world, and they didn't believe in God. But they didn't tell anybody about that. They didn't really talk about it. And the consequence for you as an individual on their existence, even the logicalness of their claim, the consequence was low enough, because it seems that you require consequence to require that evidence.
We require consequence to require the evidence.
Enough will change depending on the consequences. Sorry, it's hidden behind your head. Here we go.
Okay.
So you requiring enough evidence for the existence of these people, I imagine, would be lower if the consequence of their existence was also quite low.
Correct.
So would you then say it would become a matter of, I think how you put it before is, I don't care. Not so much I don't know, but I don't care about their existence.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I knew where I was going when I started that, and then I got lost in the yurts as well. So would we then say, okay, so let's summarize, because we've been going a little while now. It seems that some of what you would say is there is somewhere between this prime mover argument and demanding a personal miracle that somebody could ask for, where they would say, a physicist might say, I just wish there had been some description of these fundamental laws of nature written in this book. Correct. And because I don't see evidence of that, and given what is of consequence to me as my Sundays and how I raise my children and what ethical code I choose based upon whether this person really was or wasn't the creator, I haven't seen evidence for that. It sounded like what you were saying before is, I could believe that they exist, but I haven't met them. So I choose to disbelieve that they exist because myself and other people haven't met them, haven't come across these logical atheists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yet we could say if the consequence for their existence was quite low, you wouldn't require enough evidence to prove their existence, because you would say the consequence is low. So that might suggest.
Oh, yeah. If they were. So what would happen if there is a threshold, there's an amount of people that are atheists with enough that is logical, and when this threshold is passed, you have consequence in a way that I wouldn't be able to claim that it is illogical to be an atheist, to just be an atheist.
Okay.
That's the consequence. So therefore, I will ask for proof.
So does this end up becoming? Does this end up becoming a bit circular? This is not really me doing SE. I've half abandoned SE for some of this.
Somebody would say you need to change your claim about the atheist being illogical, because I have proof that most atheists, 51% of atheists, have this kind of, they know what enough is, and the enough is a bar that is mettable.
Sure.
It's that kind of thing.
Sure. Okay. So, but it sounds like, if I'm right, you're saying, well, there would be a consequence in the existence of those atheists, because that would mean I have to change my views.
Yeah.
So would you say then that is raising the bar of evidence to prove something because you don't want to agree with it, rather than because it's more or less likely true? Do you think it's a reasonable or logical thing?
The claim had a bar that has been set. If there is a certain amount of atheists that do not have enough, therefore I could claim it is illogical to be an atheist.
Okay.
There is a bar set for the positive Of course, there is a
Sure.
bar set for the negative,
Right.
but the bar that the enough has set for the positive has been met.
Okay.
And the bar set for the negative hasn't.
Okay. All right. So the bar. Okay. Interesting. So what is the bar you would set for meeting a logical atheist?
51% of the atheists were
So
having enough, knowing what the enough is, and the enough isn't too far-fetched.
Right. So I guess my question is, of an individual standing in front of you or on a stream in front of you, how would you tell whether they had set enough in the right place? And how would you establish whether it had been met for them in order to determine whether they're logical?
Okay. So what happens in my personal research, because I did that, I went to those servers where they debate, and there is a server named Atheist Server. So
Sure.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna meet some atheists there.
Sure.
That's where, and I ask, okay, what is enough for you?
Mm-hmm.
And they would say answers like provable, repeatable, whatever test. But I would say, okay, but specifically, what would be enough? What kind of situation? Do you have to read a book? Do you have to have 2 people, 3 people meet, whatever? And that's where I lost them. So what happens is that I had like, I don't know, 10 atheists or 20 atheists, and I took a sample. Out of those sample, there was maybe 1 or 2 who had an enough, and the enough were met, and they still not believe. The others had an enough that was too high.
So let's talk about those middle ones who had the enough set in the right place.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't in the right place, but nevertheless, the enough was met.
So what would be the test that you would use for an individual in front of you? Hang on. Why don't we come towards the end of the SE, and then for the next thing, you could ask me the questions, and you could take me as the atheist or somebody who doesn't believe there's enough evidence for God, and use that to establish whether my bar or somebody else. We could also pass it over to somebody else, because I see there's a few people in the chat.
Really, it's crazy how many people there is. I'm like, what? So many.
So you could ask the questions of somebody else, particularly if they were happy being on my stream and coming in. Cool. That you could ask them the questions to establish whether their enough was logical.
Yeah.
So
that would be great.
Where would you put this 65% now? Same place?
Oh,
your confidence
let's say
in
I asked them, and the answer they gave me is like, oh, yeah, I think that would be a good bar for enough.
Sure.
And I'm thinking of, it wasn't met yet? What?
Yeah.
Why is it that for me there is no... Right now, I don't have an example of such a case where the bar was created and wasn't yet met.
It hasn't happened for you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the example of you that you gave of this atheist wanting to find proof of mathematical or physical things not known to the world, but still written in the Bible, this happened already.
Right.
This bar is met already.
Sure. Well, because, yeah, so...
you understand? But some people know that, well, they're saying, well, this scientist read the Bible and found that stuff about the future that the Bible never could ever believe in, and was converted because of that. This happened in the Bible. And but say, oh, but he was crazy. I'm not crazy. It needs So they move the enough.
Right. Yeah. Moving the goalposts, they sometimes call that.
Again,
Yeah.
okay, it's not per se others, it needs to be me. And that's
Sure.
when it's me, you have the goal that goes
So do you think
way
there
over.
is, if we establish that sometimes other people, in order to keep believing the thing they already believe, be it atheism or in religion, if you think that sometimes they might move the enough or move the goalposts, as I put it, do you think there is also the possibility that you might do the same thing? If I were to accept, sometimes I move the goalposts, when presented with evidence for God, maybe bump it up a bit. Do you think there might be the risk that for you, you might bump it down a bit? So you would go...
the need for... I hope I'm a logical person and that my prime mover argument is a good bar.
Okay.
Basically. But you know what? It doesn't really matter because yes, that bar has been met, but other bars in my life has been met also.
Okay.
When I realized that there is a God because of the prime mover, I had to choose which God is the correct one.
Right. Yeah. Because this was a thing where I'm like, next time we chat about this, that will be an interesting thing to talk about, because this argument,
is for God being instead of which one of the God.
yeah, absolutely. A deist or a theist. So so excellent. I think that's a good place. I've enjoyed this conversation, Luke, and thank you also for responding so quickly and saying yes, we'll do it, particularly on stream. I want to know if you've got questions, and then I'm curious to hear feedback from you or anybody listening, because I somewhat threw out bits of SE during that conversation and wasn't doing as much strict SE as we normally do. So what are your thoughts or questions, Luke?
The enough that you spoke during our test, the example of being able to read into the Bible, is it something real or is it just something that you thought of on the spot?
It's a few. I've often asked the question of myself, what would be enough? Because people used to say, scoffing at atheists, they would go, if God themselves came down and said, I do exist, most atheists wouldn't believe it. And I was like, of course I would. And then I was like, no, actually I wouldn't. I would probably start doubting my own sanity. So
correct.
I guess the challenge would be, for every proof, I could think of a disproof. So then I was like, well, what would be, it's kind of like what you say about the consequence thing. What would be the utility that I would want to see there? Where what I would like to see that I think would be a reasonable bar to set is something I heard somebody talk about ages ago, which was, imagine we had these texts in the Bible that for hundreds of years probably would be very difficult to even go, what is he talking about? Small organisms, tiny, tiny little organisms that are so small you're not able to see. And then after a while you go, bacteria, viruses, right? So then I would go, because for a few reasons I would go, I think God might put that in there because it's useful to us, because it can increase peace, love, and happiness to be peace, joy, and happiness, I beg your pardon, to be healthier and to look after other human beings. So that would be one of them. The other would be seeing things in religious texts that were, I don't know what it would be, actually. It's a good question. What would I consider to be enough?
So, I mean, my question was just this one about the future in the Bible is something that you really thought of. It wasn't something that just popped into your mind during our conversation.
Yeah, it's something I've thought of a bit, where I've like, that would be much more likely to convince me. Yeah,
I like you more. You're a good atheist.
Am I? Would you go? Would you go so far to say I'm a logical atheist?
Not yet.
I'll work on you. We'll get there, Luke. We'll get there.
So the other questions. Yes. What do you think of my epistemology?
What do I think of your epistemology? I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is very. I think some bits are very robust. I think that how you define illogical makes sense. And what you're saying about having different burdens of proof, to me, makes sense. I'm not sure if I agree or can understand, or not sure about the epistemology actually, so it doesn't need me to agree, of that enough needs to depend on consequences. I can understand the why we would be driven to do that, but I think for epistemology, a more effective place to set that bar is based on probability rather than consequences. Okay. So like, because I guess I would think the difference of like, somebody comes up to my car and says, I'm giving you a speeding ticket. And I go, well, I really don't like those consequences, so I'm going to doubt that you're a police officer, versus the person comes up wearing flip-flops and a singlet and says, I'm giving you a speeding ticket. And I go, well, it's so improbable that you're a police officer that the probability seems to me to be a better place to decide what enough needs to be. And the consequence is absolutely a personal thing where I go, well, I want there to be better proof because I don't like the consequence of it. That I think is more a, seems to me like it might run the risk of being biased to lead me always back to a conclusion I prefer. So if I prefer to believe that I don't have a ticket, I will always come to that conclusion. And I think that could lead us to stay stuck believing the same thing, where I like to doubt all of the things I think.
That answered the first question. The last question would be, do you think you would be able to answer others about my views?
I think so. I would like to ask you that question, really. I think I would, yes. I think there might be... Let me just read back through it and see if it all still clicks in for me. I'd like to be part of the atheism group. Probability, yeah. So, yeah. I think so, yes. I think I could give a pretty good... I think you could overhear me describing your views to somebody else, and I imagine at times I might not use exactly the right words, but I imagine you'd be like, yeah, I think he got it. What are your... Yeah. What would be your... how would you rate?
I don't know. It's a question I ask for my questionnaire in essay.
Yeah.
Because I want the person who interrogated me to make sure that he understood me instead of himself and his view and his ideas, you know? So if he's not able to answer my views and only able to say, okay, this is where he went wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I have those two questions at the end of an essay session.
Sure, because that to me relates exactly to why I've suddenly started practicing and getting interested in SE, and what I hope to do when I feel I've got a better handle on SE is, I think it is healthy in all things, the existence of a God, to do I understand your position, is doubt is healthy. Because if I'm doubtful, I'm more likely to return and go, oh, rather than going, yeah, here's what Luke thinks and here's why it's wrong, I should go, is that, because then that doubt will hopefully or probabilistically drive me towards going, I'll go and check with Luke. I'll go and get more evidence. So in some ways, the bar for enough to believing in something is never met for me. I intentionally will never reach that bar. I will get to a bar where I go, this is probably the case, but I try very hard to never cross the bar of, there is so much evidence that I no longer ask these questions.
Cool. Let's try the thing that you suggested.
Sure.
Do you want to try it?
Yeah.
We've done PSC.
Yeah. Where would you put your...
that you are recording?
Yeah. Where would you put your confidence rating in that it is illogical be an atheist? Just so we can wrap it up.
The thing with my 65% is that it won't budge as long as I don't have a conversation with a theologian. This is a theologian. So it will still, it is stuck there. It cannot go higher. It could go lower. Today I learned of a possibility that I didn't think of before, which is having a bar set and at a level that is acceptable, not illogical. this is not something that I thought of. Oh yeah, maybe this kind of people might exist. So yeah, my claim is still at 65%, but I have new kind of, okay, people could think of someone who, anyway, something new to add to the conversation. And I liked it for that. So 65.
Excellent. Okay, fantastic. So who, somebody here was, did anybody want to either give feedback or have a discussion with Luke about whether they're enough or anything? Opening up the floor.
Is it James that I'm talking to? James?
G'day, I'm Harry. Riding on eggshells is Harry.
Harry
and Luke, yeah.
Yeah, Harry. I'm Michael.
G'day, Michael.
Nice to meet you.
I've seen some of your videos.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you were streaming this, so I'll check it out. I like the way you use the notes on the background. That's pretty cool.
Super cool. Yeah, I really like this Jamboard. Free. I keep advertising it. I swear Google need to start paying me.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Luke, if Luke's okay with it. The one is, when you started this discussion, I think I sort of came in just after you started, but I thought I heard you repeat the defining of atheist as someone who's withholding belief.
Said there is not enough evidence.
Yes, yeah. So an atheist is, I'm not yet convinced. That's how we were defining atheist, like in the agnostic atheist traditional sense.
Okay.
Is that the way atheist was defined as the basis of this whole discussion?
Yeah, so we stuck with someone who claims there's not enough evidence.
I'm checking with with Harry. He said yes. I think yes too. Yes.
Harry has a reliable way to know because he has all these colored notes on his board.
Yeah,
so it's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so if that's the whole foundation on which the discussion flowed from, here's my thought on it. To me, it seems illogical to expect anyone to set a bar or criteria as to what is enough when they haven't yet heard the details of the claim to which they're supposed to be assessing. So to me, if I'm withholding belief, I have a couple of criteria I apply. So one is, I'm not going to believe your claim unless I have good reasons, sound and valid arguments. Or two, whoops, sorry about that, just turn that off. Or two, I want to see that on the balance of probabilities, it's more likely than not, when I'm comparing competing theories, that your claim is more likely to be true than the competing theories that I have at hand. But I can't really know what that is going to be until I've fully fleshed out what the claim is. So it doesn't make sense to say that I'm illogical or honestly saying I don't know when I haven't heard what the competing theories are. It makes more sense to me that it's illogical to actually impose that requirement on someone.
Yeah. I don't want to to go into a debate, but yeah, we disagree on that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I enjoyed the conversation. It was really good. You guys did a good job. It was very entertaining. It was interesting. So thanks, guys. That was good.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Harry, what do you want to do? It's your show.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking if somebody else wanted to speak up, otherwise we'd wrap it up there.
I could speak up.
Go for it, Grain. Tell us.
So you want me to say a claim?
Say, do you want to do an SE session? We certainly can do.
You mean asking Luke?
Yeah, or you could,
or a new SE session.
New SE session. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Let's just do that in a moment, because I think the first thing you were keen to do, wasn't it, Luke, is have a discussion with somebody about their enough for atheism, or what are your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, the idea that you shared during the SE I liked a lot was having more samples of atheists,
sure,
and what their enough is.
All right. So, Grain, why don't we have an SE session next? And before that, is there anybody in the chat at the moment that's happy going on the stream who feels that they hold that they are an atheist under the description of someone who claims there is not enough evidence for God, who feels that they do hold that position, Yeah.
and know what enough is.
And they know what enough is that would like, because then I guess you, Luke, can do SE on them to establish whether their enough is enough.
Yeah, or at least one example. I'm missing some. That's
Sure.
just crazy how much
Give Luke some more
people
data.
I've met that say, oh yeah, there is not enough learning. What is enough? And they say, well, I don't have anything. You're the first one, guy. You're the first one with the example of having the Bible predicting stuff in the future. Is the first time I hear an atheist tell me what an enough would be. Could look like.
And just to clarify my one, it's not predicting stuff in the future so much as like there will be this war or flood or something. It is much more describing reality in a way that we wouldn't understand until the future.
Then, yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody want to?
Oh, by the way, it happens. Remind me to tell you what is the case in that one. It's really amazing. Okay, next.
Sure.
Is there someone in the chat?
Let me just
I don't think there is.
Let me just see. I think because some people are organizing a different SE session.
Yeah.
I could do it if no one else wants to. Get up here.
All righty. Hello.
Hi, Seb.
How are you today, Luke? And hi, Eggshells.
G'day.
Yeah. So I am an atheist, as I conform to the definition of the word. I prefer to say undecided, but that seems to classify here. And I think I know what enough is.
Cool. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So for me, it does depend a bit on the specific religion. So you mentioned the prime mover arguments, and I can see a sort. I can see a form of logic and reason in making that. But I wonder if the prime mover argument is enough to conclude about specific properties that the prime mover has. I'm not sure it is logical to ascribe certain properties to that prime mover. So as for what would be enough, it sort of depends on the properties. Say, for an example, if a god can be said to answer prayer, I would say that enough for me is to show that prayer consistently works in the same way that we might consistently find other rules in reality to work. So the bar for me reflects what we currently have available to us. Problems that we have found with the world, things that we have found that we can't explain, and the same process that we've used to explain those things, such as the weather.
Okay, so yeah, I understand. Prayer works would be your bar, if I understand correctly.
Right. If the
right
given
now,
religion was claiming that prayer works.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We are not claiming that prayer works. An atheist is claiming there is not enough evidence for a god, any god. So it's not that God that make prayer works. They are claiming that there is not enough evidence for any God. So what would be enough evidence for any God? That's what I was looking for.
I think that, so if you, for example, take the philosopher Spinoza, who I am not very familiar with, but it seems that he thinks that God is the entirety of what is known and can be known. And sorry to those who may know that I'm misrepresenting this, but it seems that that is compatible with our current understanding of the world. Of the world. And although he claims that is God, it might just be a description of that. So we would have to define God in some sense. Could I agree that there is a prime mover based on the argument, the ontological argument? I'm not sure. I feel like I would have to look into the logic of that argument a little more in quite a formal sense.
Harry, did you hear the enough part, or am I the only one not hearing what enough would be?
It sounds like enough. I'll try and play it back so I get it right from Sub's position. It sounds like if the religion is claiming that, as it's often called, intercessory prayer, or prayer that will ask God to intercede on my behalf, is claimed
he knows
to
what would be enough in that case of that God. But
right.
Yes.
The question is more about any God.
Yes.
What would be enough for any God to exist?
Right,
it depends on the properties of that God. So
yes,
prayer is an example, but if the only bar is that there is a prime mover, I agree that potentially, in my case, that would be enough. But I find it unreasonable to ascribe properties to the prime mover aside from there is an uncaused cause.
Okay, so what happens with the prime mover is the properties comes after you claim to have a God. You're not an atheist anymore. You have a God, which is a prime mover, and now you are looking which one is the correct one, which of the religions have the correct information. Of course, you will rule out the religions that don't have a prime mover, like the Buddhist religion, that they don't have a prime mover. But you will still have many religions available. Don't worry. A lot of work to set bar on enough. But you won't have the choice. You won't be able to say I'm an atheist anymore. You're a theist. You just don't know which one you want to pick, and that's another discussion.
Okay. Yeah. To that, I might ask: does there need to be religions on this earth as we know them in order for there to be a prime mover?
No, the prime mover is there whether there is religion or not. He's objective truth.
Yeah. Okay. Given that, would it make sense to look at only the religions that are currently available in order to determine which is the prime mover?
What?
If I could understand that there's a prime mover without religions being on this earth, does it then follow that I am limited by the religions that are available in order to determine which one is true?
Okay. Many religions have the prime mover. All Christians have prime movers. So Jews also, and Muslim also. So many religions has prime mover as their God. Their God is the prime mover. It's a quality of their God. So people who believe that there is a prime mover cannot be called themselves atheists. They have a God, which is a prime mover. Maybe it's not the God of the Christian or the Muslim or the Jewish, but it is a God. It's not atheist anymore. It's a theist with this God. They can claim, I don't adhere to any religion. I have a God, but I don't adhere to any religion yet, because for each religion you will have your own subjective enough proof that is after. It's not pertaining to the claim of to choose to be an atheist is illogical. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Does that help with my bar for enough?
Yeah. I understood. If you could, Harry, tell me if I understood correctly, and if you understood the same thing. What I understood Sub said. He said enough. I would need to look into the prime mover agreement, and when I look into it, I would know if it's enough or not. But if it holds up, this would be enough.
Yes, but I might also claim that I might not see usefulness in the distinction of calling the prime mover God in the same way that a religious person might call the prime mover God. It seems to blend. I might worry that I would mislead somebody about what I think is true.
You would have your own religion at that point, and then have to choose other or create your own religion based on that if you want to. But you won't be an atheist anymore. You won't be in the illogical part of the spectrum, since you have your answer to the prime mover argument. And what's fun with that assessment that you just made, you say, okay, since this one is met, I have enough evidence to claim to not doubt there is a God. But I claim there is not enough evidence for me to choose which God is. And that's not the atheist position, it's the theist without a religion position. It's a different position. And for me, it's I'm not ready yet to hold the position that those people are illogical. I need to meet more. I need to meet more of those people that have a God, but not the Catholic God, to make it is the claim that their position are illogical. But,
I suppose I might add that in the same way that I don't know that the sun won't rise tomorrow, and it's possible that all of the this entire world that we're living in is an illusion, and the person having this dream wakes up. In the same way that I don't fully know if it's possible, I have a high degree of reasonability in believing that tomorrow is going to come the same way that it has. And so, in terms of my certainty that a prime mover would exist, the logic of that can only convince me so much. I might have to, if it were possible, I'd like to go and see this prime mover, or to witness this in some way, or something like that, in order to be sure.
So the way I understand it is that you're enough change, right? The enough that I stated.
Right. It's a sort of clarification of my level of certainty isn't 100%. That's the essence of the statement. The level of certainty isn't 100% in the prime mover. In the same way that everything that I know right now, maybe tomorrow this is all a dream, and the person having the dream wakes up and it was all
in that sense, yeah, of course.
Right.
Will never be 100%. I agree with you. It's a good way to see the word. And I think everybody, not everybody, at least Harry would agree with you too, based on what he told me on how his word view is. Okay, thank you very much, Seb. Yeah. I think that's it for the people here.
Yeah. Great session. That was really good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So good. Did we have any feedback before we want to move on to another SE session?
How did I do?
How did
I represent?
I thought you did well. It's interesting because it's so much of the challenge of this for me is about restricting or inhibiting the urge to argue. So I think in that way that you did very well. What I thought was really interesting that suddenly popped into mind partway through that was if we were talking about the consequences are the thing that changed whether I require a higher burden or a higher enough. And what I thought was interesting was to move to the prime mover argument, because the prime mover has less of a consequence, I think, than a God who answers intercessory prayer.
Right. Yeah. So again, the properties of the prime mover matter very much to me. The properties that we would ascribe to it.
Yeah.
As it would stand, I would ascribe no properties to the prime mover.
Yeah. And could be, as was it Hume or someone was saying, what about if God did exist, did create the planet, did care about how we lived on it, but died or left Or what if, as somebody suggested in the chat, what about if the prime mover did exist but was in no way supernatural? Because that's a question I often wonder, which is, as a species, we seem to be developing greater and greater agency to move objects many, many times our size. So is it conceivable that we could have kick-started, that a sufficiently advanced, totally natural being could have started the processes that led to the Big Bang, and as such were at least in this universe, a prime mover, yet were in no way able to answer prayer or do supernatural things. So yeah, I thought you answered and did. Sorry, that was more me sharing my thoughts rather than exploring.
Oh no, I appreciate it.
Oh! I forgot to tell you about the thing, Harry. The thing in the Bible. So, you know how touching? There are scientific research today that say that touching something makes you more closer to the thing that you touch. So if you touch $1, you have a harder time to give it back than if you don't touch it.
Right. Yeah. Loss aversion, I believe they call this. Do you mean psychologically?
So, God is aware of that and created the Eucharist in that view. You touch the Eucharist. Eucharist is the host.
Right. I don't know what Eucharist is.
Be careful on which tab you go on.
Yeah. Suddenly just like, here's my home address, everybody. This is where the heathen live. Lord's Supper, Christian rite. I see. Uh-huh.
So the host is the little bread that we have.
Right. Okay.
And that we touch. We can touch it to be closer to God. God was aware that touch was necessary, but we found out that later.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that
one of the many things.
Yeah, I think that would be, because I certainly think that a lot of psychological concepts you can learn a lot from churches. I think I would probably need more evidence to suggest that they weren't just humans coming to understand what persuades us. Then I think you might call that bar illogical.
And you have also the prayer. And the research on how the fact that you take time to think about nothing helps you to solve your problem. You have the thing about the benedicite, which is when you the prayer that you say before you eat.
Right.
It's something also that science found out later that it makes you have a better supper when you take time before you eat.
Yeah, I could easily believe that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those things, there are things that we discover with time, and I really like them. But all of those things are known to us since 2,000 years ago because it was given to us by God in the Bible.
Sure.
We did it.
This can be a subject for a future SE session. I think that would be interesting to explore. But I'm mindful. I said to Grain we could have a chat. What was there a particular claim you wanted to talk about, Grain?
You guys can go as long as you want. I have all night. Don't mind me.
Well, I'm happy to move on just because I have an inkling that Luke and I could talk about this for about 18 hours straight.
All right. My claim is that I'm very confident that there is experience after death.
You're very confident that there is experience after death. Okay. How confident would you put it?
9 out of 10.
Okay, you're very confident that there is experience after death. You put that at 9 out of 10. Okay. I'll make that a 2-liner. Okay. So what gets you to that 9 out of 10, Grain? Would you be comfortable? You can feel free to say no. Coming on video. If you're not, that's fine.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. So what do you feel then gets you to that confidence of 9 out of 10 that there is experience after death? That confidence.
I think it's because I'm an idealist and I see mind as primary. So there's not a pressing reason for me to think experience ends. Why would it end? And also I'm a Buddhist and I have, religious stuff going on with me. That's also a reason.
Okay. When you say religious stuff going on with you, do you want to share what that means?
I contemplate and practice Buddhism. I take the ideas of Buddhist masters as valuable, stuff like that.
Sure.
And a lot of them think that there's, that death is not the end of experience. And I kind of trust them in the same way that you might trust a doctor when they say something about medicine, even though you don't know yourself.
Okay, so those, can you describe those people in Buddhism that you trust again for me?
Masters, meditation masters, teachers.
Sure, masters / teachers in Buddhism. What is it they say about experience after death?
It happens.
So, right. And you listen to them like you would listen to a doctor.
Yes.
Got to do this in first person. Okay. So what is it about when doctors speak that causes you to listen to them?
I know that they've undergone a lot of training and they've gone through many tests. And because of all of that, they have a lot of trustworthy knowledge. And I view Buddhist masters the same way.
Okay. So because they've gone through training and tests, they therefore have trustworthy knowledge.
Yeah. And like they've done medicine successfully.
Right.
They've practiced.
Sure. They've practiced medicine successfully. Would you say that is true of all people in the medical field? Or would you say that there might be the case where there are...
I hope so. If they have licenses.
We would hope so if they had licenses, yeah.
If they have licenses, I hope that they went to college and all of that stuff. Or maybe I don't understand the question.
So yeah, I'm also wondering about people who are in the medical field, but they might be, let's say, a faith healer or somebody who would say to you, I've been through training, I've done tests, I have trustworthy knowledge, and I've practiced medicine successfully. Here are the people whose cancer I have healed with the power of this healing stone. Would you trust what they say?
It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm. Depends on the person. Sorry, depends on the person in what way?
I would examine the things that they say. I would examine their history. I would examine where their ideas come from. And if it all seems reasonable and trustworthy and beneficial to me, then yes. And if it doesn't seem that way after I do my examination, then I'd say no.
Would you say that for other people, or perhaps even for yourself, it's possible for something to seem reasonable and trustworthy, but for it not to be? Perhaps because it's useful for them. So I'm thinking of Steve Jobs, when he was diagnosed with cancer, pursued alternative therapies for quite some time, and then later on said he came to regret that because after his experience with that, he found them not to be trustworthy. But initially, because it was something, I'm going to guess here, this is not what he said, but I think he might say something like, because it was so important for him to hope that his cancer was curable, he found it easier because it was of benefit to them. He found it easier to trust them. And then later came to question that.
What is the question you're asking?
Would it be possible to set these benchmarks and come up with the wrong answer, I guess is my question.
Yes, you can trust something that's, yeah, you could have trust in something and then it fails.
Sure. Okay.
Or like it doesn't work.
Okay. And so how would we know if we're doing that, if we've put our trust in something that fails or doesn't work?
Do you mean how would you know, before you start or in the middle or at the end?
Sure. Yeah. Any or all.
Well, at the beginning you wouldn't know. At the middle or end you could tell by examining things.
Sure. What things would we examine to know that there is, or to be confident that there is experience after death?
Oh, can you repeat the question again for me so I can think about it? I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. What you're saying, we would need to, partway through, we might be faced with a claim that we think, well, I look at them, and when I look at what they're doing, I think they've been through training, they've done tests, so I'm going to choose to trust what they're saying. And then what you're saying is, at some point, probably not at the beginning, but maybe at the middle or at the end, there is a way we could determine that our trust was misplaced and that what they were saying might have been wrong.
So
Would that be right?
How could I know if the Buddhist masters are wrong?
Yeah, given that we are, let's say, at the middle, or perhaps for some of us, without our knowledge, we are approaching near the end. How would we? What measure would we use to determine whether they are right or wrong about this?
I can't. I think it would be hard for me to think of things that would allow me to say the Buddhist masters are 100% wrong instantly, but I could think of things that would lessen my doubt. I mean, increase my doubt. So do you just mean anything that would increase doubt, or do you mean I instantly know that they're completely wrong?
Let's talk about the ones that increase your doubt.
So if Buddhist masters claimed that they have like magic powers, and then later on I found out that they were just doing sleight of hand tricks, that's something that would increase my doubt.
Okay. So seeing them claim that something was in some way, I guess, supernatural, and then finding out.
I didn't hear what you said because it went.
No, that's good.
Your voice went robot for a second.
Oh, right. So what I was saying is, there are some things that would increase your doubt about the Buddhist masters, and that might be an example of something where they were showing you something that they claimed had a supernatural explanation, and then you found out it had a natural explanation, like they were just doing sleight of hand.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And that would show, what would that show you about the Buddhist masters that would increase your doubt?
It would show me that they were lying about something related to their religion.
So they could be lying
about one thing, they could be lying about other things.
Okay. So they could be lying, and that's something that would increase your doubt. Is it possible that you could have reason to doubt them even if they weren't lying?
Yeah, things could happen.
What kind of things?
For example, maybe in the future, scientists will create some sort of like foolproof way of proving that there's no experience after death, and everything that everyone else has ever experienced was just a hallucination, which is definitely not related to the afterlife. Like, if something that amazing happened, that would be a thing, and that wouldn't involve them lying.
Sure. So scientists proved that there was no experience after death, that could increase your doubt. So essentially, how I might put that is that these Buddhist masters could be lying, or I might say could be mistaken. Would you agree that they could be mistaken, or no?
I would give it, in the beginning, I said my confidence was 9 out of 10
Mm-hmm.
because I always like to be open to the idea that I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the same thing for saying, I mean, it's the same thing really, 9 out of 10. I don't think that they're wrong, but like, who knows? I've been surprised before.
Sure. So you've been surprised before, but it sounds like what you're saying is their confidence in the whole claim is somewhat similar to your confidence in this claim, which is you think they could be, but it's not likely. Is that? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell me
What is the whole claim?
the whole claim. It sounds like you were 9 out of 10 confidence that there is experience after death, and it sounds like maybe you have a similar degree of confidence that the Buddhist masters are not mistaken.
Yes. However, when I say Buddhist masters, it does get kind of vague because there are many different schools of Buddhism and stuff. And so maybe you could just say like Buddhist masters in my tradition.
Right.
I want to like be concise.
Sure.
Because I want to like have good faith and have the SC process go very well.
Right. Sounds like you're worried about it going. Yeah. Tell me about it.
Buddhist masters disagree with each other all the time about all sorts of stuff. Just putting that out there.
And are there any Buddhist masters who don't claim that there is experience after death? Who hold
masters who like any Buddhist masters who say death is the end?
Similar but slightly different question. I guess I would put it this way: are there any Buddhist masters who have doubt about experience after death?
Like from what I would consider a master, I would say no.
Okay. From what you consider a master, you would say no. Is it something about whether they're making that claim that would influence whether you would consider them a master, or is it something else that would make you consider them a master? Like if that was the only thing you knew about the claim.
Okay.
Or if you knew, yeah.
In my mind, a Buddhist master is a person that has the ability to like see past lives and has other types of supernatural stuff going on. So the idea of a person having stuff like that, like, it doesn't make sense to remember past lives and also say, I don't believe there's experience after death.
Okay, so it seems like that's an important thing, because it sounds like then some of the requirement for whether somebody is a master is if a Buddhist master is, or some of the definition of who a Buddhist master is that they have the ability to see past lives. It sounds like a requirement for them to be a Buddhist master would be that they do have a confidence that there is experience after death.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
so
that's one of the things I would expect them to have.
Okay.
It's not the only thing or the most important thing. It's
Right.
like if somebody is like a chaplain, like a Christian pastor or something, you would expect them to believe in God. I mean, I don't know, there are all sorts of types of Christianity, but generally if someone is a pastor or the Pope or something, they believe in God. There's no, oh yeah, you're the Pope, but maybe he doesn't believe in God.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, because I remember meeting having a debate with on Twitter many years ago, somebody who said they were a Unitarian minister, and they were saying we should come down to our church sometime, you'd quite like it. And I was like, this is really interesting. This person's inviting me to do that, given the whole discussions revolving around me having doubt in the existence of a God or an afterlife. And they said, well, I don't believe in a God, not in the way that you think I do. And I was like, oh, okay, so what is it to you? And they'd come to the position, if I were to try and summarize their views, and this is sort of over a decade ago, so it's going to be slightly hazy, but was that it was more, God was not a literal thing that exists as much as a useful set of principles that will help us live our lives. And I was like, well, what about the existence of heaven? And he said, well, it just to me, he described it as something akin to Santa Claus for adults. You know, this promise of something good in return for good behavior. And I was wondering, the reason I was talking about that in terms of Christianity is I was hearing a chat on Reasonable Doubts or something. There used to be a really good podcast on atheism and skepticism. And one of the hosts one day said, well, I've been running this atheist podcast for however long. It ran for a very long time. Highly recommend. It doesn't run anymore, but highly recommend listening to it for anybody. Then he said, well, I'm actually a Buddhist atheist. And I'm going to forget which tradition of Buddhism it was, but he was saying that I think it is Zen Buddhism believes in the sort of almost immaculate conception of Buddha, that he didn't come out of the birth canal, but I think sort of popped out almost whole and had supernatural abilities, and that school is much more in the belief of there being experience after death, in the form of reincarnation, but then eventually going to nirvana. Whereas he was saying his tradition of Buddhism was much more one about skepticism, that was saying, yeah, we think that there is reincarnation, but he said from consulting his Buddhist masters, whoever they were, that he could choose to not believe that, but embrace it as a principle, to say, I'm going to treat other animals as if they are of me and I am of them and we are the same, because that is a good principle, but it may not be literally true. And I was curious if you came across a Buddhist master who said that. But I'm guessing, so if they were to say, when I say I see the ability to see past lives, it's more that I'm invoking those principles in order to make you live a more virtuous existence, but it is not necessarily a requirement that I hold that to be literally true. Would that alter at all your belief in experience after death? Very long question.
You mean like if a person from my tradition said that to me? If it was only one person, no, that would not make me doubt rebirth more. Experience after death.
Mm-hmm.
I would just think that one person is not as much of a master as I thought they were.
Okay.
And actually that has happened. Like, there's lots of corruption and like there are fake teachers and all of that stuff. There are people who lie.
Right.
So sometimes somebody is venerated as a master when in reality they don't have much meditative experience.
Right. Yes, I lived in India for a while, and I came across a few like that where they were. It's because there's benefit to it. People might lie, or sort of exaggerate there. So by what method could we test that claim that a Buddhist master is really seeing past lives and not lying or mistaken?
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yes, okay, everything's okay now. So you asked by what method could we test this claim?
Yes, if we can establish that sometimes there might be people who lie for personal gain, or maybe they really wanted to become a Buddhist master but didn't have the ability to see past lives, so they just pretended they could, or if they're perhaps, I guess it's worth asking a question, do you think it's perhaps possible that there are some people who honestly, sincerely believe that they are seeing a past life, but they're not, that it might be something else?
Yes, that's possible.
So by what method do we use to establish that when Buddhist masters tell you they're seeing a past life, they are not either mistaken or lying?
Well, I couldn't know myself because I'm not omniscient, but what I would try to do to find the best answer is look at this person holistically. I would look at their history of practice holistically.
Mm-hmm. So you look at them holistically. And what do you look for when you look at them holistically?
Do they come from a lineage in which practice is important? Are there a lot of is there proof that they actually have spent a lot of time practicing? Did they grow up in a monastery? Did they do meditation retreats? Are they do other Buddhist teachers vouch for them as a person who's very honest and realized? Things like that. Or is it was it just some random person who got out of bed one day and started saying, I'm going to tell people I see past lives now?
Right. Cash in on it, right? So let me just go back through a few of these because a little bit of a slouch writing them down. Do other Buddhist teachers How did you finish that? Sorry. Look at them and believe in them or something?
Like respect them as a teacher.
Sure. Just other Buddhist teachers respect them as a... Sorry, do other Buddhists respect them as a teacher?
What is their lineage?
What is their lineage? Have they gone... Something about retreats as well, wasn't there?
Yes.
Right. Would it be possible that somebody met all of these criteria yet was still lying or mistaken?
Yes, they could be lying. Mistaken, I would say no.
Okay. How would we be able to determine if that they are not mistaken?
Oh wait, no, sorry. Mistaken, yes. They could be. Yeah, they could be mistaken about things. There are people who spend a lot of time learning and they become like very learned in an intellectual way, but they don't really have any realizations for themselves. They just have more intellect and stuff like that. They can become very proud and be proud of themselves, and they don't really have anything they should truly be proud of.
Okay. So that pride could be influencing that trust. So they could have gone to retreats and had that lineage you talk of, and other Buddhist teachers could respect them as a teacher and go, well, they really do know a lot about those texts and those tenets of Buddhism and the mantras
Yes, that's it. Just today I was reading a story about a Kenpo who was really smart and like he was never lost in debates.
Yeah.
A Kenpo is just a Buddhist scholar in my tradition. It's like
Very
a person who
interesting.
has a degree, like a master's degree.
Sure. Yeah, carry on, sorry.
I read a story today about a Kenpo who had like never lost a debate and he was super duper proud of himself, but he was not, I mean, I don't know, they didn't talk about that. He probably didn't have much realization. He just had intellectual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I could definitely see a person like that being really arrogant. And then maybe one day they have a dream about them doing something weird. And they say, oh, I remembered my past life, but it wasn't really a past life. It was just a dream of an ordinary person.
Mm. So that kind of partly their arrogance and partly, I guess, also it might have something to do with the fact that they were so enmeshed within Buddhism might make them have a dream or some sort of experience that they misinterpret to be one that is in some way something that would boost someone's confidence in something, but it's actually a mistake because they're attributing it to the wrong cause. Is that? I am not using your words, but I'm trying to understand if that's what you're saying.
You kind of went choppy near the end, so I did not hear all of what you said.
My internet going bad today. This is go on. Sorry.
I don't know. Maybe it's mine.
You were fine.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's green. Internet, not yours. Don't worry.
All right. So
I feel like you understood me.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems that if somebody were sort of overcome by arrogance or pride, they could mistake phenomena or something, a dream perhaps, and believe that to be in some way, I don't want to use the word divine because that's the wrong word, evidence that there is experience after death, but they could be mistaken.
Yeah, somebody out of arrogance could believe they remember a past life, but be mistaken.
Okay. I'll ask this question without being...
some other type of like thing.
Sure. Would you say that there is a risk that there is something circular to some of this logic? Which is not a very clean or essay way to ask the question. But it seems that what you are using, at least in some part, because of course there is that you're an idealist, there are other reasons to have this belief, but it seems that in some part it is based upon the teachings of Buddhist masters, who you would agree could be sometimes lying or could be mistaken, but it is by listening to them and the requirement of, for them to be a master, they must believe that there is experience after death, and it is you listening to them that gives you confidence that there is experience after death. Would you see that somebody might suggest that reasoning is in perhaps some ways circular?
Well, I'm not a logician. My first instinct is that I ended up explaining things in a circular way with
Right.
some parts of my reasoning process left out because
Okay.
I'm just answering your questions rather than focusing hard on writing a step-by-step logical explanation.
Sure.
That's my first instinct. But it is also possible that my beliefs are just circular. Lots of people have illogical beliefs without knowing them.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, all of us do. I think certainly all of my beliefs are held in some way, which is, I think, in some ways natural. So okay, let's go back through this. Are there any bits that you want to talk about while I sort of look at this and I'm there going, oh, what question should I ask? Is there something that you want to talk about rather than me directing it?
I'm thinking.
Sure. We could talk about being an
All right,
idealist,
yeah,
as
I
that
know
is the
what I want
first
to
thing you
say.
said. Yeah, go on.
All right. I was a naturalist for a pretty long time, like
Okay.
from age 10 to 18, and I spent a lot of time on the atheist internet, so I love spending time with atheists. It feels very natural to me.
Sure.
Most of my friends are atheists.
Hive of scum
So,
and villainy. No, they're not. Yeah, go on.
so I know that it's common for skeptics and naturalists to say, like, I don't see enough evidence for me to believe in God. There's a lack of evidence.
Yeah.
And I felt that way too. And I also felt that way about other types of supernatural beliefs.
Mhm.
But when I encountered Buddhism, okay, no, not just Buddhism actually. When I had that whole there's not enough evidence attitude, I had only encountered religions that don't show you a lot of stuff happening.
Okay.
But when I eventually I encountered a different type of religion and spirituality where stuff happens.
What stuff
And
happens?
people have spiritual experiences,
Okay.
all sorts. And I had never really thought, I didn't even really know that this type of religion existed. But as soon as I knew that there were types of religion in which people consistently have experiences that are brought about in a mechanical way, like you read a cookbook, you follow the instructions, and then you bake the cake or whatever. It can be the same way with these spiritual experiences in certain types of religions.
Right. So if you
After I knew
go
that,
through
I
the
became
steps, you will have a spiritual experience, and that for you was evidence for that.
no, not
No, sorry.
I'm not quite done yet. No.
Oh, beg your pardon. Got
I
excited.
was very interested.
Sure.
So I'm a Tibetan Buddhist. Tibetan Buddhism is one of these types of religions. There's something called Tummo. In English, it's more commonly known as inner heat practice.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that's been documented. Like they did research at a university. So you can go to Snopes.com. Go to Snopes.com, Tibetan heat meditation. You'll find it. So my attitude toward religions is that, okay, at the beginning, I don't know anything. But then when I find that they have something like this inner heat practice, to me, it sounds really impressive. Like, wow, if you took the most well-respected biologist in my country, in the United States, or the most well-respected neurologist or doctor, they would not be able to do this practice. Yet these people, living in a semi-medieval country are able to do it. It shows me that something is going on. And when I see that something, it makes me curious. And when I'm curious, I want to explore deeper. So I did that, and I never stopped exploring.
Sounds awesome. Yes, I've
And
heard
even
about
though I
this
don't,
Tibetan practice, and I'd heard about this study before because I many years ago rode my motorbike across the Himalayas, and although I didn't go into Tibet for obvious reasons, there were many Tibetans on the sort of cultural or sort of genetically, I don't know how you'd say it without ending up sounding like a racist, so I just won't. But Buddhists on this side, and when I then heard about this study, I was like, I can see why, because it is chilly up there. So that's interesting, right? How do you pronounce that again? Tumo?
Tummo.
Right. Okay. So it's from when you saw these practices, and you were like, because you were saying other atheists have said I don't have enough evidence, and then you saw some of these practices where people were able to do these incredible feats that advanced people, scientists, etc. in the West weren't able to do. That made you very curious about these claims.
Yeah, it made me curious. So this is one extraordinary thing. Like, there are not a lot of people who know how to keep themselves up in the snowy mountains of the Himalayas just with their minds.
Yeah.
But Tibetan Buddhists are able to do this.
Right.
So then I think, okay, how did they learn how to do this? Like, did they just read like some myth in like what did they just? Where did it come from? I asked myself. So my suspicion, I would say they got it from trial and error. They got it by trying different things, and sometimes they worked, other times they failed. And they ended up developing this entire system. So like this practice Tummo, it has its own instructions. It has its own cookbook. And it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Tibetan Buddhism. So Tibetan Buddhism has Tummo, they have other practices. They also have a lot to say about experience after death. So it's kind of like this. Step one, I don't know anything about Buddhism. And at that point, I would just like not care about anything they say, because extraordinary claims will require extraordinary evidence.
Sure.
But then I see this Tummo thing, and I think, okay, that's one extraordinary claim that was met with evidence. So that makes me curious. I'm like, okay, if this one, they actually did have evidence for this one, maybe their other claims are also true. I think it's not like they're not running on empty when it comes to reasons to trust their claim.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So number one, you don't know anything about, step one is you don't know anything about Buddhism, but your position is they seem like extraordinary claims, so I'm going to require extraordinary evidence before I choose to hold them with any degree of confidence or believe them. Then step two is you see this Tummo and you go, that is an extraordinary claim and it is met with evidence, so maybe their other claims are true. So if I explored that third part, would you say that it would be possible they could be right about Tummo, but wrong about the existence of an afterlife?
Yes, that's possible.
So what would you use to establish whether they're linked or not, whether one is a good test for the other?
Could you elaborate on that question?
It's just, again, not going very good with SE with this way of saying it, but it seems to me the claim of Tummo is, like you said, something I could establish through trial and error. I could go, right, we have a need for an ability to warm ourselves from our core using our mind, but we have no...
The purpose of Tummo is not to like warm yourself. The warming is just a side effect.
Right, I see. So a sort of deep meditative practice. I guess I just got the warm because I was like near there. I was like, oh, I could see that. Right. Yeah. So it's much more about the practice, but they can establish that practice. It seems that you say, possibly through trial and error. I try this way of meditating or this activity, and it does not reach that, that meditative goal, does not raise my core temperature or my fingers or toes. So I'll try a different one. I can establish a failure from this test and use the failures and the successes to narrow down until I have a reliable, repeatable practice that is Tumo. And I guess the challenge I would have is there a way, would there be a way that they could come to the claim of experience after death using that same method, that we could have the same confidence in that claim as we have in the first?
I would say it's probably not going to happen, and I hope that it doesn't. Because Tibetan Buddhism is a religion that keeps secrets, and there are several reasons why. Like, you could imagine that if a person just read about Tumo in a book, but they didn't really have a qualified teacher to guide them through it, they could hurt themselves very badly.
Right.
So Tumo is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Tibetan Buddhist practices that give you an experience, but they're not all open like this. From what I understand, the only reason that this, Tumo stuff is available on the internet was because the Dalai Lama said, okay, we're going to make it public, show them Tumo. It's normally not it's not normal to like show stuff like this to the public.
Right. Okay.
So there's never going to be like proof about, the afterlife or reincarnation or seeing past lives the same way there is proof for this Tumo stuff. Unless like all of the Tibetan Buddhists change their minds suddenly.
Because I guess some of what I'm wondering is, would it be possible that if I wanted to believe in if I wanted to increase my confidence in past lives, is there a risk I might look at something like Tumo and overstate or overestimate its validity or relevance to the claim of existence, experience after death, because that was a view I already held? If that makes sense. Again, that's a really poorly worded question.
Is it possible that I could use Tumo as confirmation bias?
Yeah. Could I, if it was meaningful to me that I believed in experience after death, because I'm wondering, because what popped up to me is Pythagoreanism or whatever it is. What's the sort of Pythagoreanism, which was established by Pythagoras. That, because I imagine if I were talking to them, and I were to say, and that they were to say, well, Pythagoras was a mathematician beyond his time who established these things that people didn't understand at the time when it came to maths and the areas of a triangle, and then he also made claims about, I think it's also existence after death. This is a very dense bit of wordage here. This will be better. Wikipedia's better.
So is the idea?
Go on.
So is the idea really just? Is it possible that I'm seeing too deep into this because I'm just biased towards, the supernatural already, and I want it to be true, and therefore I'm like ignoring all the evidence for the opposite?
Well, I'm not suggesting there's evidence for the opposite, because I think it would be, I guess the challenge I would have if I was suggesting that is I don't know how we would do trial and error from the afterlife. But in the rest of the question, in essence, yes. Would there be a risk, do you think, that like I go to church and the priest says to me, oh, here, and does a, I say my arm's really sore, and he does a manipulation on my shoulder and pops it, and I go, wow, that's better. That should then influence my belief in whether Jesus died for my sins. Actually, I could see why it might. I could see why it might.
I don't see it as a risk. I see it as an opportunity to learn something really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's true that there is risk. There's risk, but there's also benefit. And there are things in life where there isn't just an easy answer.
Mm.
You have to learn. Sometimes you just have to risk something. Well, you don't have to. There are times in life when it's beneficial to take a risk.
There are times in life when it's beneficial to take a risk. And what would you say
Yeah,
the
yeah,
risk
I
is with
agree.
this?
What is the risk with being very confident that there is experience after death?
Hmm.
If a person believed that, they could end up committing suicide because they think they'll go to some heaven existence and end up causing a lot of suffering.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there could be risks to that. Okay. Trying to think of
There's
other.
also something I want to say about Buddhist monks having the power to raise their heat. There are many religions all over the world that have like extraordinary things happening. I don't think that they're unique to Tibetan Buddhism.
Okay, because that's lines up exactly with what Luke's asked in the chat. Is if a Catholic were able to do that, would that be evidence for you of Catholicism? So right, so it's not specifically. So tell me. So yeah, finish that thought. Then it's not only Buddhists who are able to do these things.
Oh, the thought was finished, but you want me to say more?
Yeah, if
I
you
have a lot of respect for any religion. Basically, whenever there's a religion that has stuff happening, I like those religions more. They're more interesting to me.
they're more interesting. Yeah, right. Was there anything that would reduce your confidence in that there is experience after death?
You know, I think that's like my favorite SE question. So, is there anything? I'd have to say, I don't know. The possibilities are endless.
Hmm.
Oh, wait, did you ask this question before? Wait.
No, I asked a similar one before, but it was sort of guessing at what I thought one of the answers might be, but not specifically what do you think might reduce your confidence. So the possibilities are endless. Can you think of any what those possibilities might be?
Not at the moment. You know, I think that I've thought a lot about why I have the beliefs I have.
Mm.
I've been an atheist. I used to be like an atheist troll on Yahoo Answers religion and spirituality section. I spent a lot of time thinking about these things, and I'm really confident in the life I've built for myself.
Right.
But could I come up with something that makes me doubt it more? Maybe. I'm open. It's a 9 out of 10.
Right. Would you want to, like, if I said, and I obviously I don't, but if I said I've got a box here that's got some pretty compelling stuff in it that I think would drastically reduce your confidence in this, and for some reason you were able to believe me that it would reduce your confidence opening the box and reading that stuff, do you think you would want to?
I'm sorry, my internet went slow again.
That's all right.
But are you basically asking me, like, would I open a box that gave me doubts?
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
Okay. And why would you open it, do you think?
The attitude I have toward religions is that of altruistic curiosity. And I think that if I learn what these things that inspire doubt are, I can use that curiosity and add it in with everything else I know, like holistically in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and try to use that to help other people somehow
Mm-hmm.
and myself.
So you'd use that to help other people. Yeah, excellent. Interesting. All right, great. I think, do you have, I'm happy to start wrapping up now. And I want the next two bits to do are ask you where your confidence is at. And then if you've got any questions for me. Your confidence, you put it at the beginning at 9 out of 10. Where would you put it now?
I'd say it's still a 9 out of 10.
Sure. And do you have any questions or feedback for me?
How have you ever done SE with a Buddhist before?
No, you're the first Buddhist I've used SE to talk to.
Are you like, how do you feel? Like, okay, I wonder when I say these things,
Mm.
like, are you surprised by what I said? Like, does any of it sound like? Are you surprised? Did I say anything that surprises you? I'm
Let
curious
me
to know
look
that.
through. The Tumo thing was surprising. I'd heard of something about that before, but I think that was surprising because I hadn't connected it so much because I'd always
You
thought
know,
of that
there's
more
one
as
more
well.
thing I like to mention in addition to Tumo. It's
Mm.
called Tukdam.
Took. Say again, sorry.
Yeah, it's spelled T as in Tom, H as in home, U as in under, K as in karma,
Mm-hmm.
D as in dog,
Here we go.
A as in apple, M Tukdam.
Took them.
Yeah, so Tukdam is a fairly normal thing in Tibetan culture. Like, okay, like there are some things like the rainbow body that sound so extraordinary and weird that people like immediately reject it. The rainbow body is a person's body like disappearing into light when they die. Like
Right.
nobody's going to believe that. That just sounds like some religious like myth or something. But tukdam is something different. And tukdam happens so often that you can't just ignore it. It happens all the time. Like
Right.
everybody has a story of somebody they know. Like, you know how they say there are like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Like everybody in Tibetan Buddhism has like at minimum 2 degrees to somebody
Right.
who died in Tukdam.
Rainbow body, and is that a belief that people within your tradition of Buddhism still hold to be true? The rainbow body one.
Yes. One of
But
my teachers, Chogyal Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche, his uncle achieved rainbow body, and also one of his teachers named Ayu Khandro achieved rainbow body. But
Okay.
that's like extremely rare and extremely amazing. That's
And
extremely rare. Like I don't expect like non-Buddhists to believe in rainbow body,
right.
but there's no way you can doubt Tukdam because it happens all the time.
Do you doubt rainbow body?
I believe in rainbow body.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Like just from when you Googled it, I think that there's like some articles from like Indian newspapers talking about local Buddhist teachers who died in Tukdam.
Mm.
When Tukdam, it means it doesn't really matter. Like if anyone's interested, they can look it up themselves. So yeah,
Very
I
interesting.
just like to talk about Tukdam. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, thank you
So is
very
there anything
much.
else we should do?
I that's all the questions I can think of at the moment. Unless somebody else has questions. Excellent. All right. Well,
Have question. Yeah.
go for it, Luke.
My microphone was off while I was asking the question. It
Sure.
works.
Let me get back
Doesn't
in just a second. I need some water.
Did you answer the question of changing religion if you were to observe extraordinary events on other bodies?
I have not looked at any chat questions, so I will do that now.
I'm back.
Hey, Harry, it's Michael again. I've just been away and I'm so disappointed I missed this because this just sounds awesome. There's a lot of Buddhism that resonates well with me.
Me too.
Except for this. Yeah. And I'm just disappointed that I missed whatever you've explored here. But if you're streaming this, were you streaming this conversation?
Yeah. I'm about to wrap it up, but yeah, you can definitely see it again. It'll start from about the hour and a half mark in the stream replay.
All right, cool. I'll have a look at it. Yeah, nice. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, so
Cheers.
Luke asked, could those Buddhists floating above the ground be meditation? I've never heard of Buddhists floating above the ground as like a common thing. Maybe in other religions that's common. I know that like there's like a magic trick that people do where they hold a staff that secretly has a seed in it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I've never heard of that being related to Buddhism.
You might, I'm wondering, Luke, because I know I had a lot of, when I lived in India, well, still do have them as friends, a lot of, what do you call them, Hare Krishnas, or Hindus, because Hinduism and Buddhism are very similar, because Buddhism essentially comes from Hinduism. And it's more, there are lots of beliefs in Hinduisms or claims in Hinduism of being able to levitate. But
Okay.
yeah, I haven't heard it with Buddhism.
Okay.
Like there are there are teachings that say you can like learn to fly and stuff like that, but it's not like something people are showing off all the time.
Oh, so there are beliefs that, okay.
Well, yeah, anybody can do that because we have energies in our body. I actually have a story about that in one of the books I own, but it's not like something that people are like, it's not like a thing that Buddhists try to use all the time. I would say that scam artists do that more than like authentic Buddhists.
But you do, it sounds like you have confidence that Buddhists who say they can do that. Would that be accurate to say that?
I mean, to be honest, if a Buddhist could do that, they wouldn't say it. They would keep it a secret.
Mm-hmm.
So if a Catholic were able to do a tumo, would you convert to Catholicism? No. So the way I see it is doing these things, let's just call them, I don't know, what's a good word to use that doesn't like cause pain to anybody. These activities, you know, we're all human beings and we all have the ability to do these activities. You know, the way I see it is the different religions of the world are like different types of sciences. Like maybe Buddhism is like physics and Catholicism is like chemistry. And they've both discovered amazing things. And there's some intersection and there's also some like differences. Like there are lots of Hindu. Oh yeah, this is something I should mention. Like generally in ancient Indian religion, there was always an awareness that people in different religions can like have magic powers. Magic powers are not considered like exclusive to one religion when it comes to the religions of India.
Yeah, I think it's in quite a few places.
I think that was it for questions. Are there anything?
Yeah.
I think that's it for questions.
Yeah, it seems like it is. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, particularly to Grain and Luke for jumping on, but for everybody who was joining in chat. I think it's been really, really interesting. And thanks for joining me while I'm trying to figure out how to do this streaming thing, because it's really different way of doing things. It was good. I enjoyed that conversation. Thank you, Grain, and Luke as well.
Well, thank you, Harry, and thank you very much, Luke. You know, thank you.
Now you need to edit.
Now I need what?
To edit your video. That's the worst part.
Oh, I'm just going to leave the streams up. Editing is just awful. I'm just going to leave them up in full and people can watch them in full if they want to. But I doubt they will.
With your address.
Yeah, showing my address and my bank balance. Excellent.